Ladies and gentlemen, how do?
Hello and welcome to Mondo Street Social Club, a new podcast aimed at bringing creative minds together. Mondo Street is about sharing the creative process, discussing the highs and lows, and talking about how we cope when the creative genie eludes us. Pull up your comfy chair, put in your best headphones, and enjoy the next hour. Hello and welcome to Mondo Street Social Club. In this episode, I'm joined by comedian and illustrator, Matt Reed. Matt, good evening.
Good evening indeed. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you today?
You know what? I've had a tattoo today, and it feels like I've been punched in the arm repeatedly.
Oh,
but
no. Was it a large or a small tattoo?
it's about palm size on the top of my massive bicep. Wait, laughing at? It's massive. And
I was waiting for you to actually show me there's one that caught my eye, which was a series for the Succession characters.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I think you'll have some more ammunition by the end of this series.
God, I cannot believe how good that program is. We watched it last night. That episode tore me apart. Like I was like, God, it's such a good show.
It's really well written, and
marvelous.
just when you think that they might have a single ounce of humanity left, they go and say, nah.
Yeah, you're going, oh, actually, you know what? He might just, no, he's just kicked the puppy.
And then the puppy goes and kicks a cat, and it just escalates onwards and onwards.
And he invests in some sort of deep sea, deep sea pollution company, not even creating anything, just making a mess of the ocean for money.
Oh, it's insane. It really is. How's comedy been since the pandemic then?
Well, I've just been so grateful that that I've been enjoying every gig more. It's like you know that if a man has a gun to his head and then he survives, then his next breakfast will taste like the best breakfast he's ever. It was like that because I honestly, when the pandemic hit, I don't think I've ever been as low. Like I was on the bottom.
Yeah.
It was horrible. Like the idea where like everything you've worked for the past 10, actually it'll be about 18 years at that point. Everything you've worked for 18 years to get anywhere and do the job you love, that's gone.
Yeah.
Unlucky. And the government was like as much use as tits on a fish.
Yeah.
Like they would just say, I mean, I can't begin to tell you how much I hate the Tories, but
you're in good company.
Oh God, I would watch every one of them drown. And like I was like, and I was just ending up like retrain, and I was like, how dare you?
Yeah.
How dare and I was so angry all the time. And then when I got out of it, and like I always remember like my first gig without restrictions, because I was doing like gigs with restrictions, and to be honest, it was fascinating. The way people try to get around stuff was incredible. Like I was doing gigs in Rayton Arena, and they had like a 5,000 tent, and they were like limiting it at like 1,000. So like there was tables with chalk lines around where you weren't allowed to go, and then people just fetching them beers, like, and some of them were, right, here's your beer, just like, and but it was when I got out of it and I finally started doing the comedy clubs that I couldn't travel to before. I mean, I've never, like, the elation was just like so good. It was so much good. And then there was a period when everyone's fine now, you can leave, you can do what you want to do. There was a period when no one understood what was going on, and it was so confusing. But at the same time, like, I mean, the amount of jokes about the pandemic, like, there's still people now going, are we okay after lockdown? Like, you might want to update a bit, but yeah.
What's the best heckle you've ever had thrown at you?
What I've ever had, I actually use, because if it's a good heckle and it's not just your shit or get off or out like that, if someone's actually thought about it or they're funny enough, then even if it's a shit joke that works at the time. Last time I was doing the Comedy Store, there was a lad in London, there was a lad at the front, and he trained blind dogs. Like, he trained guide dogs for the blind, not blind, he didn't train blind dogs. What a point to give this blind dog to this blind man. Wow. I mean, don't get us wrong, blind dogs have every right to be trained.
Oh, thanks, mate. That's it, I'm done.
but there was a bloke that trained guide dogs from the blind, and I went, "Oh, that's lovely," and someone at the back went, "Didn't see that coming." I was like, "Oh," but it was so well
Yeah.
timed that the whole crowd went, and I went, "You know what?
Yeah.
That was well timed."
Yeah.
And I gave, and he got the round of applause. I love stuff like
Yeah.
that. I love, like I've seen like too, some of the bits I use on stage are like genuine heckles I've had. But like one of them, there's a lad that was a Geordie lad at Leeds Junglers years ago, and he shouted out, he goes, "Here!" I went, "What?" He goes, "You look like you've just escaped from Jumanji." I was like, I can't argue. That's brilliant.
That is clever, that, isn't it?
Absolutely brilliant. And but I mean, like the best heckle I ever saw, and it wasn't. It was it was horrible because it was just an idiot in the crowd. He was a moron, but the heckle was so. He didn't think it through. It wasn't clever on his part. It was just so unescapable what he said. It was Paul Sinner.
Okay, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
Sinner.
yeah.
Love Paul. He's one of my favourite people on the circuit. He's absolutely brilliant, and he's one of the best comics. He's so clever. He's so quick. But this absolutely destroyed. It was years ago. It was Leeds Junglers again, and it was me, Tom Stade, John Mann, and Sinner. Stade was closing. I was on first, and Sinner was in the middle because he used to have 2 acts break, headline act, and me and John Mann are very joke, and Sinner's very like explainy and like and anyway he came on and he started. He goes, I'm a Bengali man I'm a doctor. I used to be a GP. He goes, I'm a gay man. It was very hard to come out with my parents because of the culture. And this lad just stands up and goes, "Here, mate, what are you doing?" And Paul goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're just telling us stories about your life." I was like, he was absolutely bang on. Like, he couldn't.
And how did Paul respond to that, though?
Well, not well.
Yeah.
Still remember, like I think he still has that as like one of his least favorite gigs of all time.
Oh.
But yeah, and he came. I think he came off a bit early. He went down to the green room, and I came down, and he says he remembers me coming in, just going, "Paul, I know that was horrible. That was one of the funniest things ever." Next night, he absolutely destroyed the place. He absolutely took the roof off.
Wow. Hello and welcome to Mondo Street Social Club. Today I am joined by Johnny Flores, owner, founder of Flores Podcast Productions, all the way from Sacramento in California. Hi, Johnny.
Hi, Phil. Thanks for having me on.
Great. How are you? You well?
I'm doing really well. I'm overall really happy and doing well right now.
Good stuff. Good stuff. You help people to produce podcasts. How did you get into that line of work? Because I don't think it's something that you went through school and went, "Oh, when I grow up, I want to be a podcast producer."
No, in fact, yeah, I was well into my 30s when I started doing podcasting. Yeah, it was completely by accident. I had a neighbor who lived across the street from me um, at the old house I used to rent. Um, and I was always into nerdy stuff, and he had approached me and said, "Hey, would you want to do a podcast?" This was around 2011, somewhere around there, and I had just started listening to podcasts from How Did This Get Made? I was listening to that podcast pretty heavily, and I was like, "Sure, what do you want to do?" And he's like, "I don't know. You come up with the idea." I was like, "Okay, and how do we do it?" He goes, "Well, don't worry about that. I've got all the equipment. Just figure out what you want to do." So I kind of thought about it, and in keeping in line with my nerdiness, I had thought, "Oh, well, I'll do kind of a nerdy roundtable podcast, like pop culture nerd stuff."
Mhm.
And I invited a couple friends on, and we did that for almost 2 years. And then people, because we were in our early 30s, late 20s, people started getting married and having kids. And I was just having a harder and harder time getting people on the podcast that I had come to really enjoy having on the podcast, my friends, and people I'd met through kind of nerdy stuff. Um, and I had made every mistake you could possibly make with that podcast, like not posting episodes regularly and just everything you could do wrong with the podcast I did with that one. And so after about a year and a half, 2 years, uh, we stopped it, and I kind of sat on it for a little while, and I thought, oh, if I do another one, I want it to just be me because it's so much easier to manage the production if it's just
Mhm.
me and a guest. Like I'll just have one guest on. Um, and being in Sacramento, well, we were kind of talking about this before we started recording, how we're so close to the Bay Area. We're always like kind of in the shadow of the Bay Area, and
Yeah.
um, a lot of bands, bigger acts, will skip over Sacramento and just go
Mhm.
straight to San Francisco. A lot of comedians will do that too. They won't even play in Sac. They'll just go right to San Francisco or Oakland. And there wasn't a lot of like self love in the city for the city, and I love living here. Um, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do a podcast about Sacramento. I'll have people on that I've met. I used to be a freelance illustrator and artist, like as a side gig, and I thought, okay, I'll start having those people on because I met all these amazing people who were doing really neat, creative things and making Sacramento so interesting to me.
Mhm.
And so I started having them on, and this was in 2014, and the podcast just took off right away. Within the second year, third year, somewhere in there, it was getting several hundred downloads, and by the third year, it was a few thousand.
Wow. It's impressive.
Um, Yeah, and this was early in the podcasting, Serial hadn't even I don't think was even out at that point yet, which really broke the door open
Mm.
on podcasting. And yeah, and the show just got really popular, and I did the show from 2014 to 2019, and during the course of the show, previous guests that I had on or people that had become friends with through the podcast were starting to move up in their
Mm.
careers
Yeah.
and were now in charge of things, or they were team leaders. And um, they started asking me to help them create a podcast for their companies that they were managing, and I didn't even know. I remember my first friend who asked me to do that. She's like, "What do you think you could do it for?" And I was like, "I don't know. I have no clue. What do you think I should do it for?" She goes, "Could you do it for $1,500?" I was like, "Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to make a podcast for $1,500." And so she asked me to send her an invoice, and I told her I don't know how to do that. I don't know
Mm.
how to write an invoice. So she helped write me. She kind of helped co-author my first invoice that I just ended up handing right back to her.
Yeah.
And that really got the ball rolling. That was in 2016, and in 2018 I left my job. I had a job. It was kind of a toxic work environment. I was
Okay.
ready to move on to something else.
Mhm.
And my girlfriend really encouraged me for several months, quit your job and just do this. People are asking you to help. I was kind of known in Sacramento as the podcasting guy. And yeah, that's how I founded my company and got going.
That, you actually learn so much more about people than you
Y-
expect to.
Yeah, I've met so many. I mean, I've done at this point thousands of interviews,
Yeah.
sitting fly on the wall or conducting them, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've just met amazing people over the years. I go to here here in the United States, we have Podcast Movement. That's sort of the big podcast convention, and um, I've made amazing friends
Yeah.
through that. Made amazing connections. Met wonderful, really just down to earth, good, decent people through
Mhm.
that. Through podcasting too. I've just in my city of Sacramento here, I've made tons of friends and met really neat people. I'm now in a stage where I mentor a lot of new freelancers, so I'm meeting people that way too, just through going out and saying hi and being asked to speak at things. And
Yeah.
um, it's been I've met amazing people through podcasting. I love the
Yeah.
community.
Tonight I'm joined by Scott from Slazarus. Slazarus are a two-piece from Brighton. I think it's fair to say more towards the heavy rock end, Scott.
Yes, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, good. So, Scott, we'll kick off with why Slazarus? Okay, why the name? I know why, but not everyone else does. And talk to me about how you got this this very powerful two-piece together?
Well, so it's Lazarus. So my name is my family's original surname is Lazarus,
Okay.
which actually originates from the Ukraine. So my great grandfather,
Yeah.
his name was Wolf Lazarus.
Wow.
And emigrated over to England in the 1890s.
Okay.
Which obviously was part of the I don't know what it was in the Russian Federation, but he was Ukrainian. He came over. The family continued to use the name Lazarus up until the 1950s. So my dad was born with the name Lazarus, and they had it changed in the 1950s. Mainly because he at school he was having kind of issues because it's a Jewish surname,
Sure.
and he was having quite a bit of aggravation. So they decided to change the surname to an English surname, which is Lester.
Yeah.
Spelled Lester. And the reason they changed it to Leicester was because it was where my grandparents met in the town of Leicester, but they
Yeah.
didn't use the spelling. Musically speaking, I've been kind of wanting to reclaim the name, really, reclaim the surname. So I've kind of performed as a solo artist under the name Scott Lazarus, and when we were talking about me and a drum playing together, we said, well, you got S for Scott, Lazarus, so it's S Lazarus or Slazarus, and that's how it's kind of stuck from there, really.
Fantastic. I've got to say, your great grandfather has got the most rock and roll name of all time.
It's amazing.
Wolf
It's amazing.
Lazarus.
Wolf. I just imagine him some really big, burly guy with a big beard and an axe, ready to cut down a tree somewhere. It probably wasn't like that at all, but which is rather funny though. That he named his son Henry, which is about as normal as you could get.
It really is, isn't it? It's kind of like he would be the accountant for the band while your grandfather will be up front. And I think that one of the things that comes across when you look at your lyrics and when you listen to you performing them, that there is a real emphasis on lyrics. The music seems to be taking care of itself as it's rolling along in the background, and it's almost as if you've concentrated on lyrics just that little bit more than the next person.
Yeah, it's always been that thing that I've always cared about really deeply, and the first artists that really struck me in terms of lyrics, and it's very different from the style that we play, but Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon. I remember being kind of 14 years old and hearing The Sound of Silence, which is one of the most amazing lyrics ever written, and just the kind of depth of lyrics and how I connected to that at that age, feeling quite isolated and lonely, and so music became about the lyrics and a way of kind of expressing my own feelings and observations, and so it's always been the driving kind of focus for me with the music.
Tonight I'm joined by Paramore GB. Evening all.
Evening.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me tonight, everyone. Wow, it's kind of like a little bit weird. It's like the Brady Bunch having all these faces in front of me. So if anybody knows that song, join in. First question for you all. Oh, actually, I should read out who you are. Lisa on vocals. Josh on bass.
Hello.
Hello. Joe on rhythm guitar.
Hello.
Dan on drums. And Jay on lead guitar. That's it. The gang's all here. And believe me, the technical trouble we've had getting here, the gang's all here. So, Paramore GB. Okay, so you are a tribute act for the great and mighty Paramore, a band that is held great affection by many, many, many people. What inspired you? What was it about them that made you go, that's the band for us?
I think we should probably throw this over to Lisa because she's the founding member, should we say?
Yeah. So I've always been into like pop punk music since I was at school. And then I also did a lot of musical theatre, so I like the beltiness of vocals, and Hayley just mixes in all of that together. Really, Paramore songs are just amazing as they are. Putting Hayley Williams in the mix with her vocals and her belt, her stage presence is just, yeah, it's insane. I think when I started, I just threw out a Facebook post of just, does anyone fancy covering some Paramore band tribute music? Well, why not? I think I shared one of their MTV unplugged recordings.
Yeah. Do Paramore know about Paramore GB?
I wish. If they
Hang on a
do.
sec. What do you mean they
Hayley.
don't know about you?
I don't know. To be fair, maybe they do because they're only human, aren't they? They scroll through Instagram and
Yeah.
They're very active, aren't they, on social? So
They are.
they
Yeah.
might have seen us somewhere.
Yeah. Well,
you know, if you need a bass player at any point, you know, I love you all to bits. But if you just need me to depth for a night, let me know. I'll be more than happy to do that.
Is somebody putting a transfer request in there?
Oh, I'd never leave.
Oh, I don't know. Dear me. Well, maybe that should be our 23, 24 mid-years resolution to get Paramore to know about Paramore GB. So apart from that, then you've got your Instagram account, which you're very active on, which is Paramore GB or at Paramore GB. Anywhere else people can get in touch with you?
Facebook, YouTube. We have TikTok now. We're down with the kids, as it were.
Down with the kids.
Down with the kids. I think that's everywhere. Oh, we have got Threads. Got Threads.
Oh, you got Threads as well. Yeah. Dan's throwing gang signs behind you. He's all doing that. I think he's transferring to Iron Maiden next week. Good morning, Karen. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
I'm here by accident, actually. So I never knew I wanted to be a writer, which is crazy, isn't it? Because lots of writers just say, oh, I've been writing for years. I wrote my first book when I was 5. Yeah. But no, I never knew what I wanted to be. So I never went to university. I liked drama, but I liked the confidence. I liked art, but I was never very good at fine art. So I liked the modernist kind of splashes of colour. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to go anywhere with that. I loved writing, but I'm not sure whether it's the stationery I liked more or the actual writing. Love stationery. Yeah. So at an early age, I was attracted to office jobs and administrative jobs. So I've been a receptionist, an administration assistant. I was a valuation consultant for a new homes developer. Okay. And then I really wanted to be a PA. That was like my dream job in my 20s. And I actually managed it. So I ended up being a personal assistant and the office manager at the Lees School in Cambridge. Okay, yeah. So it's a very prestigious school. And it's actually, one of my favourite jobs. Well, before writing, obviously. But I started a fun educational blog on Facebook. And I just wanted to support and help other parents because I thought that maybe I wasn't the only one feeling a bit anxious about it. Yeah. and it actually turned out to be quite a success. So that is what inspired me to carry on writing children's books. There's something in there that people found entertaining, and that's what books are. They should be entertaining. They shouldn't be too preachy.
Mm-hmm.
They should entertain and then also combine a message as well. If you ask any writer what would make them feel successful, it would be different for every writer. For me, as you say, because I'm so new, my dream, my aspiration is to be a published author. So to see my book on a shelf in a bricks and mortar bookshop, and then to see a complete stranger pick it up and buy it and want to buy it, that for me would be success.
You mentioned writer's block. Has that crossed your path yet?
I know that was going to come up because that's the theme of the interview, isn't it? It's stumbling over difficulties. But you know what? So many writers are going to hate me. I don't actually get it. I have the opposite problem, where I have so many ideas and so many projects, and I just can't write them down quick enough. So I struggle with the feeling of being overwhelmed rather than writer's block. And I think the ideal answer would be I read a book, or I go for a walk, or I talk to a friend, or free writing where you time yourself for 10 minutes and you just write constantly. The actual answer is, I have a mini meltdown. I do stress cleaning. I have a bit of a cry. I'm quite an emotional person. I beat myself up at the gym. So that's my way of getting rid of my frustrations. Mm-hmm. And I rewrite my to-do list. So I reprioritize all the time because life gets in the way of writing. It's not like going to an office 9 to 5 and then coming back and being out of your writer's mind. You're constantly thinking about writing. So I'm constantly reprioritizing. And then I just take one step at a time. I start to slow down because you only get overwhelmed if you're trying to do too much, which I always do. So I just slow down.
Hi, Billy. How are you today?
I'm very well, very excited, despite the fact the weather is minging outside. I don't know how it is where you are.
It's starting to decline quicker than my my sleep pattern. It's really, really not good.
I was going to say it's declining quicker than my career. I'd say. But thankfully, the rain was off this morning when I stopped by the graveyard to visit it. So, I need to go back to the Fringe. I've got a new show. Need to go back to the Fringe, and so this year was great because I was really, really busy, and I had a clear head. I was getting inverted brackets full night's sleeps, which for me isn't long. I don't need a lot of sleep, but I do need sleep. It was great this year. I was doing my work in progress show called I want to get this right because it changed this year, didn't it? Was it Energetic this year? It was Energetic this year. Was it Energetic this year? I had two shows. Buzzing. It was buzzing this year.
Okay. So you were energetic, but the show was buzzing.
Yes, yeah. The thing is, I had two shows back to back, which kind of had similar names for some reason. I think I was going for a trilogy or a franchise. You know what I mean? I think that's what I was going for. So I did Buzzing this year, which was a work in progress, which was really good because I got to say bye-bye to a whole bunch of material that I've been doing for a while and kind of started blooding in new stuff. And when you get to do that for like 25 days, you really start getting an idea as to what you're kind of doing creatively. And I'm entering this kind of new, exciting sort of creative phase of my career, which I'm quite excited about. So I was doing that. I was doing a show called Show Me Your Tattoo, which was the world's first ever stand-up comedy improv chat tattoo show, which nobody really knew. It's been a show which I've done before and has always been really successful, but nobody really knew that this was kind of the farewell to that show. Like this was, I'm not going to do it again. It's done. We had a great run. It might take other forms. Like it might become like a podcast or it might become a documentary or something, but that's it done. And then the rest of it, I was just having fun, hosting a pick of the Fringe every day and doing a show called An Englishman, Irishman and Scotsman. And surprisingly enough, I was the Scotsman in that show. So
I just wanted to pick up on something you said. Then you said that you said goodbye to some material.
Yeah.
How does that feel like? What does that feel like? Because obviously you've been working that material from inception through to it being crowd ready. and then refining it as you've been giving it out to the audience. What does it feel like when you say goodbye to it? Is it like a kid going off to university, or?
I think it's a little like that. I mean, I guess it's a never say never kind of a thing. Like, but I can't speak for other. I mean, I wish that I was like some of the comics, like I was able to be unbelievably scripted with that fabulous memory recall that so many comics seem to have. But I don't, and I for me, it's like if I stop doing it for a while, chances are I will just forget it.
Right.
Like I will just, it's kind of, I don't feel the same about it, even if I did try and bring it back. So it is quite sad, but I think it also forces you to move forward a little, which it might not be as easy as you'd like to think it is. I mean, I see some comics, coming to the Fringe every year with like a brand new, spanking new hour that they've never told anyone, and they take the month to get that ready. And that used to be what the Fringe was about.
Yeah.
That used to be what the Fringe was. I mean, I've learned this from other comics, like the generation or 2 generations before me, that it used to be you basically turned up at Edinburgh with a blank page, and that was you working the show for a month. That was the show that got buzz. You'd be the awards or whatever, reviews, what have you, at the end, and that was the show you took on tour. But now people are turning up at the Fringe having like previewed it since. I mean, some people are going to start Edinburgh previews, I guarantee, before the end of the year for next year's show.
Yeah.
I'd never really accepted that I might be my best asset because I always turn up. I'm always very motivated. Like I never figured like, oh, maybe I should just do
and you always say
something
yes
on my
as
own.
well, even to going to Tulsa. So you.
Well, that's it. You know what I mean? And I usually I find myself very easy to deal with.
In this episode, I'm joined by Victoria Simmons, singer, songwriter, actor, and voiceover artist.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Music's always been in my life because my dad is actually he won't like me saying amateur musician, but he does get paid for it. So how much amateur you want to call him? It's so I did grow up knowing that music was a potential career, whether it was doing the same as he did or maybe taking it that little bit further. So I did a lot of music and drama when I was younger, and it was probably more music, but then I ventured into costumes and theatre. The theatre grew into my love of musical theatre. And from that, I did more straight acting and took the music away.
Yeah.
And once I'd done so much musical theatre, I thought, I've got all these songs that I've written down that I want to put out there to other people. Mainly it was just recording that for myself to start with, and then putting it out for other people. But it suddenly dawned on me that I could do this. It was in COVID that I really thought, you know what, I've got all these songs, no one's listening to them, I'll pop them out there, just see what happens. And then also during one part of lockdown, I realized that I couldn't go out and do any more shows, couldn't go and record anything else. So I thought, I've got my small system at home, let's use it and do voiceovers. So I did.
So who would then? So if you've got that love of musicals and you've got a lot of musical influences within the family, who would you say are your main musical influences when you're writing, when you're trying to put that sense into the song? The song's going to go this way, it's going to sound like that, I want it to be produced in a fashion. Who would you say are your main influences?
I don't think I have a main influence. I mean, everybody will always ask you, what's your main artist? And I've got so much history from the 1920s, 1940s, all the way up to modern music, that I try and listen to the song almost. If there are words in the song that I've written and it just comes to a melody in my head, whether that's a rock music or a 60s ballad or something like that, the the lyrics and the tune in my head say what it's going to be. So it could be any of them.
Yeah.